Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Justin Smith with Lee and Associates. You're on the New Warehouse podcast. And my safety tip for today is to make sure that you have visitors accompanied on tours through warehouses. I see a lot of people go through warehouses when they're shopping and in the market, and they're allowed to wander through. And it's amazing to see how many pallets are on forklifts and people aren't paying attention, trucks that are coming in the truck court, and where there's plenty of opportunity for accidents from people that aren't familiar with the operation that's going on. So when you have visitors, make sure you have someone with your company who's familiar with the warehouse. Help guide them to help keep them safe.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I will be joined by Justin Smith, who is a Senior Vice President at Lee and Associates. He is also the author of the book, Industrial Intelligence, The Executive's Guide for Making Informed Commercial Real Estate Decisions. And he's going to come on. He's going to talk to us about commercial real estate and how it plays a part in the warehousing industry. He's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on with the warehousing market right now. And we're also going to talk a little bit about his book, of course, but we're also going to talk a little bit about some potential creative ideas in terms of utilizing commercial real estate for micro warehouses and micro fulfillment and things of that nature. So Justin's going to give us some insight into that. I'm definitely excited for this. I've been wanting to get somebody from the real estate world on the show, so it's finally happening. So Justin, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining me. Like I mentioned, I've been looking for somebody to come on the show and talk about this, because we talk about warehouses. I mean, the warehouse itself is a piece of real estate, right? So it's kind of a key factor in the distribution model and being able to store goods and have a facility to operate within. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, tell us a little bit about Lee and Associates and what it is you guys do in the real estate world.
Happy to. I'm 17 years in the commercial real estate business as a broker. Mm-hmm. in our Irvine office in Orange County, about an hour south of LA. And then I'm also part of our corporate solutions practice. And the practice helps companies that have warehouses across the country. So some companies, right, will be local, some will be regional, and then some will be across the country. And depending on the size, they'll have different challenges that are real estate specific. So we focus on some of those larger company accounts as well. And then when you just think of what does a broker do, or what is his or her role in the business? There's two sides of the brokerage world. So if you think of the tenant or the company and the business that's moving the goods, that's storing the goods, that's manufacturing, that we'll typically call the tenant rep side of the business. And then you have the landlord and investor part of the business. Okay. So you'll find brokers oftentimes will represent one side or the other or both. And I focus primarily on the tenant side of the business, which has me talking with supply chain folks and different people within organizations in various different industries. So it's a lot of fun as a broker because you work with aerospace companies, automotive companies, apparel, life science, some lab companies. It's a pretty mixed bag of the types of businesses that are out there that are utilizing warehouses. So it's cool to see how each one uses them, what's important to each different person within each different type of company, and then to help them navigate their way through the market, right? So as they grow and things are going well and they need to grow, how do they do that? And what's that look like? And it means something different to everybody. So that's a bit about me and the role of a broker. And then Lee and Associates, if you're familiar, you're in New Jersey. We have a New Jersey office.
Yeah, I've definitely seen you guys around.
Yeah, so our firm started in Orange County. Our Irvine office was actually the first office. Oh, okay. And it was very heavily focused on the West Coast at first. And then during my time here, it's been exciting to watch it grow through the Midwest, through the South, and up and down the East Coast, where now we have a presence coast to coast. We're in most major markets, with Canada being in the last 5 years that we've opened up a Vancouver and a Toronto office. Oh, okay. And recently was Washington, D.C., Boston, Raleigh, Durham, and Miami. And it's been great because as those offices come online, then you get new colleagues and you get new partners and you get people that have experience in those markets that can help you when you have clients that are there, and that you can draw knowledge from as we all navigate through the market and figure out what's changing. And is it changing evenly? Is it changing regionally? Is it changing coast to coast? And Lee and Associates is a firm where you can become an owner in the firm. And I find that it's structured somewhat like a law firm. Okay. So that once you become a part owner in the firm, that causes you to want to stay. It causes you to want to invest. And it really causes you to work well with all your other partners in your other offices. And so I didn't know that's what I was going to like when I started with the firm, but I'm thankful that's where I landed because it's just the atmosphere. It makes it really nice in that it's easy to work together and work on projects and help clients and not really have conflicts. So I'm fortunate to have landed at a firm where I'm really happy and it's exciting to watch it grow.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And it sounds like you guys are growing pretty steadily with all the office expansion. And I'm sure, a lot of that driving is done by the demand in the warehousing market. So I'm curious, what is the warehousing market like right now? I've heard that because of the pandemic, spikes in e-commerce, getting space is a difficult thing. So talk to us a little bit about, what's the warehouse market conditions like right now?
We'll be back after a quick break. You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, the news articles would lead you to believe it's a rocket ship that is just going straight vertical.
Yeah.
And although I think the broad trend that's true, what you hear and read about, right, in e-commerce is you hear about online shopping, right? And you think of what are the ramifications of online shopping? And so what you end up with are the fulfillment centers, right? That's the Amazons that people think of. And Amazon really is in every market.
Yeah.
They really are taking the majority of large bulk spaces or big box spaces, say 300,000 feet and larger.
Yeah.
But e-commerce and Amazon and fulfillment centers is just one part of the equation, right? So think of returns and reverse logistics, right? That sometimes needs its own space. Then last mile, right, has been a big topic over the past year.
Yeah.
And so that takes your big tertiary market fulfillment center and starts bringing in medium and smaller size buildings in the suburbs and even in the urban core.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to watch that and see that happen and see how it's going to change things. That's real. But I feel like it's not, this growth and this rocket ship trajectory isn't everywhere. So imagine a small and medium sized business. Imagine manufacturers or people that don't sell online, service-based businesses. A lot of those companies, if they haven't gone and shifted into e-commerce, or they're not in a business that can shift into e-commerce, like that's just not the nature of their business, they now have competition from third-party logistics companies and from other e-commerce companies who are now coming in and leasing these smaller and medium-sized buildings in the suburbs and in the urban core. So that part's been interesting because that means product is more scarce. What you pay for what product you can get your hands on has gone up. And so that has made it very challenging for a lot of people. Like one example was a mattress company. So mattresses have gone online, right?
Yeah.
You can, if you bought a mattress in the past couple of years, it shows up rolled up in a plastic sleeve on your door. If you're getting one of those types of mattresses, right? But not all mattresses are like that. And so if yours isn't that type, you now compete for that same building with a third-party logistics or e-commerce company. And what we're finding is that the amount you must pay when you do, even if you want to stay, this is a part of the real challenge is, let's say you're 100,000 feet and you have mattresses and that's what you sell. You may be paying 50 cents a foot per month or $6 on the annual if you're anywhere out of Southern California. And you would sign up for 5 years at a time, would be a pretty standard lease term.
Right.
So what we're finding is, because of all of this e-commerce positive absorption in the market, you may come to year 4 in your contract, you're ready for year 5, you know you want to stay, and the amount that landlords are asking tenants to pay for their next 5-year contract, it's averaging maybe 10 to 40% more of where it will start for year 6, above and beyond what you're paying in year 5. And then it will continue to increase every year. So for a lot of these companies, business is up in many of those segments. And some people have watched their own business growth take off. But the lease market and even the sale market for that matter has gone up so much that those kind of offset a little bit and they both ratchet up a little bit. And that's it's just caused an interesting dynamic out there where even though there is growth, there's so inventory, it can't possibly keep up. That's just not, it just can't happen. Yeah.
Interesting. So I mean, because you're in the Southern California area, are you seeing, because of that and because inventory is just not able to keep up, I mean, are you seeing a lot of new construction for warehousing facilities?
Yeah. So when you think of, are we, the short answer is we are, and yes. But what are we seeing and where, right? That's the real nuance.
Yeah.
So if you started, the furthest out from the ports is the Inland Empire. And so there we find 100 construction projects for new ground up construction, 100,000 feet, 500,000 feet, a million square feet. And some of those builders are finding that it's increasingly challenging to get approvals and entitlements to build those big buildings. So some of them are starting to build smaller buildings that are 20, 30, 50,000 feet. So that's far out. That's where you have land readily available.
Yeah.
In the burbs, that's in between the ports and where you have land available, you have older buildings that were built in the 60s and the 70s that are low coverage buildings, which mean the building is small and the land is larger than what you can build now. So you'll find there is new construction in any given major city. There's probably 2 or 3 projects of where a developer will buy an existing building that isn't efficient in the way it's built on the land that is available to it. And they will buy it. They'll call this a covered land play. They'll buy it even if there's a lease in place. And when the lease is up, then they can scrape the building, entitle, and construct a new, larger building to make a more efficient use of the land.
Yeah.
And then the talk of the town is for the urban core. What are we going to do there?
Yeah.
Because if we keep shipping boxes from where we have land available to the urban core, even from the burbs, you've got traffic of the trucks, you've got traffic of the people driving back and forth at work there. And what can be done if you want to be able to hold inventory as close to where it's being delivered, right? Where the customers are.
Yeah.
So you've heard talk from Prologis and a couple other of the major land owners and investors talk about multi-story warehousing. And then recently you've started to see architects like Ware Malcolm actually start designing these multi-story warehouses and to start being able to price them, construction costs, what it costs to build them. How do you orient them in the urban core? How big of a site do you need to be able to get tractor trailers that are fully loaded to drive up a ramp to a second story, right? So you think of like the size of the lot, just the physical dimensions, that needs to be figured out. And then imagine how much weight it's bearing if you have fully loaded racks, right? With pallets on a second story. What's that floor need to look like? That's the ceiling for the first floor. And then what will you pay for rents to be in the urban core in one of these spaces? And all of this only works if banks are familiar with it and lending on these types. And if there's a market for these types of buildings so that they can trade, right? From developer to investor and from one investor to another. So those, I feel like, were a far off idea. And now that's coming down to having concrete plans and pricing so that there's some predictability to it. But you still have to have the sites available, or you have to assemble them. You have to have the city want to approve of these types of locations. And you have to have people willing to take the risk to build these and know people that the users will come and will use them.
Yeah.
So all of that is happening in the far out where there's land available. Those are happening and have been for a long time. And if you go out to the Inland Empire, 8 out of 10 buildings are new that you have to choose from. Mm-hmm. If you're in the suburbs, it's happening, but only on occasion and only when you have these buildings that are inefficient.
Yeah.
And if you're looking in any major city in the greater LA market, you may only have 4 or 5 buildings to look at, and 1 or 2 are new. So it's a much less. Mm-hmm. And then in the urban core right now is it's a dream, right? So we see that coming, but that's if you are looking there, those aren't available today. Mm-hmm. None are being advertised to be available in 2021, 2022. Mm-hmm. And could you see them as soon as 23, 4, or 5? That's we brokers are all making bets as to when we will see those real in the market. And it's hard to know when that all comes to fruition.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that was a wonderful breakdown of kind of the landscape of what's going on. And I think the urban kind of center for trying to figure out how to do fulfillment closer to the higher population of customers is really kind of the next frontier, I guess, in a sense of, how do we do that? And I think even the push for e-commerce and the switch in consumer behavior due to quarantining and being stuck in the house and stores closing, it makes it even more of a closer reality, I would say. I think just like you're saying, and like brokers are betting on how long is it going to be, it'll probably be sooner than maybe we would have thought a year ago before the pandemic, I think. But it's definitely interesting thing. But I'm curious if you've seen, because it was just mentioned, stores closing, and there's a lot of, vacant retail space. Even like by me here in New Jersey, there's an entire mall that just closed like a few years ago. Like it just, stores couldn't stay in business there. It's just empty mall basically. So I'm curious if you're seeing any like kind of creative endeavors to try and make these empty retail type spaces into micro warehouses or fulfillment centers. Are you seeing any of that going on, or is there any discussion in the real estate world about how to utilize those pre-existing spaces in a different kind of way?
There's definitely talk.
Yeah.
Right. We recognize there's a need for certain ailing, maybe primarily suburban and locations to change use. And I've heard anecdotally of some Amazon takedowns of malls. Mm-hmm. So that wouldn't be the micro fulfillment concept, right? That would be mega fulfillment. But what are the challenges, right? So there is a challenge to repurpose this space, and what is the highest and best use, right? That's how people will think about this. Mm-hmm. From the development community and from the public sector. So from any like planning commission or any city or any county, what is the highest and best use? And sales tax and city revenues, and how does that change? So I feel like there's a desire there to make a new use, but it's not without its own challenges when you think of industrial and what comes with industrial. So oftentimes you'll see residential uses close to malls, which makes perfect sense when they are malls. But when you think of them being distribution centers, in residential neighborhoods are schools, are people on the streets, people on bikes, foot traffic, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then when you think of fulfillment centers, you think of truck traffic, and you think of how do those two mesh? And inevitably, the zoning is different, right? Mm-hmm. Because the zoning will need to be changed to be any other use, whether it's the the other use we're seeing is residential, right? Can those turn into apartment complexes and turn into for sale housing? And I find some of the states, like in the state of California, they're starting to put pressure on cities to build more housing, right? Because we have a shortage of housing stock that is making it hard to find affordable housing. And then you have cities that don't want industrial because the truck traffic.
Oh, yeah.
So when you just think of that on its face value, right, one would think there's more motivation on the public side to repurpose them to residential more so than it is industrial. So I think those are some of the challenges. And what we are seeing a little bit of is in this quest to be creative is looking at single-story office buildings. Right? If you think of a lot of people working from home and how many of them are coming back to the office, there will be a portion of people that don't go back to the office, and industrial land values have climbed high enough where they can sometimes compete with low-rise office values. And that's not without its own challenges because you would have to change the zoning and it does have to pencil. And so that might be one thing that a lot of developers are exploring now as alternatives. But to your question of micro-fulfillment, there's a need for that space.
Yeah.
And what I have seen in a few markets in California, Texas, and Florida are startups that are taking down big spaces that are some of the older B and C inventory that are lower clearance.
Okay.
And then they're making those micro-fulfillment spaces out of these large buildings by using corrugated metal. And sometimes it's full-blown drywall, but they're internally partitioning larger warehouses so that they can accommodate micro-fulfillment. So if you were to look at 100,000 feet and you roll up all the roll-up doors, and you're running the new warehouse company and I'm running the Lee & Associates company, and you sell microphones and I sell books, right? We might both have our respective trucks come to the same shared dock loading bay.
Okay.
And then 30 feet in or 40 feet in or 50 feet in, if you think of the speed bay in the first row of columns, at that first row will be metal and you'll have some corridors. And so we may all share some forklifts or pallet racks. And I can go over to my side of, my 5, 10, 20, or 50,000 feet of the space where I have done my racking. And you can go over to your side, and both can be secure, both from having some form of dividing line, which could be corrugated metal, chain link fence, or drywall. We'd have security cameras throughout the whole place, maybe a security guard that's on site. And then the same concept could work in the office space. So you inevitably would have need an office or two, or maybe you'd need some flexible amount of offices, as would I. And so it's kind of like the WeWork of industrial might be, if you tried to think of how people call everything the Uber of something, right? Like a WeWork did a great job of slicing and dicing floors of office buildings. And so we're seeing that now in a lot of major markets. But to speak to your inquiry was micro fulfillment in mall space and retail space. And what I'm finding is some of these people will go anywhere where they can find the product.
Yeah.
Some would like to find those older B and C warehouses closer to retail and closer to residential so that you can have more of a cultural experience where you can be close to restaurants that you could take your team to, or you could be closer to where people live, and you can have maybe a little bit more walkable experience.
Yeah.
So I think what that speaks to is there's a need for micro fulfillment, and there's properties that we didn't think anything about repurposing up until this past year. And so those two are swirling around in the same areas, and they're finding different homes at different times depending on what market you're in and where there are opportunities.
And now a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Supply Chain Mavens. The past year has been full of fascinating and complex supply chain news, from shortages and forecasting challenges to issues with COVID-19 test components to the never-before-seen speed to market of the vaccine. In the past year, logistics and supply chain professionals like you have been nothing short of miracle workers. Supply Chain Mavens helps your team to continuously improve by developing tailored training solutions to enhance your team's competencies so they can successfully work across all aspects of supply chain. They offer exam preparation for the coveted APICS, certified in logistics, transportation, and distribution designation, as well as education in topics across the supply chain. Visit them at supplychainmavens.net/new warehouse to learn how they can help you advance your team's performance. That's supplychainmavens.net/new warehouse. Now back to the show. Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely opportunity there, and so I was curious if you've seen anybody trying to take advantage of that opportunity yet. But it sounds like there's still some complications to that, and I definitely, as you're talking about the maybe unwanted truck traffic in residential areas, certainly I live out in kind of like farm country, I guess you could say, and a lot of farms are being sold and turned into warehouses. And I mean, just today I driving down the road, and someone had a sign out front is like stop the warehouses in your town or something like that. So it's definitely a big fight. And I mean, I see in the local Facebook community groups, people complaining about truck traffic from Amazon and all those things. So I mean, it's a delicate balance, definitely, and I think it will be interesting to see how that kind of commercial property evolves over time, because it is interesting, because you have these empty buildings, essentially a lot of empty stores around, at least around here, and like I mentioned, the mall and things of that nature, and it's a great space, and the location is perfect for getting closer to the customer, being able to deliver things in more timely manner, in some cases same day probably, and within a couple of hours, which could really change a lot of things in the way that we kind of shop overall. But it'll be interesting to see definitely how it evolves, and hopefully as things evolve, you'll be keying us into what's really happening in the market as well.
I understand some of the concern of the not in my backyard for some of these developments, but being an industrial broker is opened my eyes, right, to the value of it. And so while nobody's looking to live in a big rig, right, or next to it, or to have those in your backyard all the time, I don't think of it as such a bad thing. And I think this past year has been a great moment to appreciate how that helped get us through a difficult time. Yeah. Right. So if we couldn't all have packages delivered to our houses, would that have affected all of us adversely? 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I'm so thankful that was something that was possible. And so it's, I feel like it's not as a good or it's bad. It's more of just a education process of learning more about it and its value and really what's going on. And yeah, it is interesting to think through, where are those farmers going?
Yeah.
How do they feel about that? Right. And inevitably there will be new markets that have more farmers in them, right, as they grow and adapt. And so it is interesting to watch the daisy chain of different uses and different people and where they all go as time goes by and the environment and the ecosystem changes.
Definitely. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see. And I think that the pandemic is certainly accelerating a lot of things that maybe we were thinking were not going to be happening for a couple of years yet. So definitely will be interesting to see how that develops. So I want to talk to you a little bit about about your book here. The book is called Industrial Intelligence, The Executive's Guide for Making Informed Commercial Real Estate Decisions. So tell us a little bit about the book and kind of where the idea of writing the book came from.
Sure, yeah. I'm so happy to have book launch day, April 27th. It's coming soon. This is next Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd say you caught me at peak excitement day. But the book itself, the idea of writing it and maybe the confidence to know that I could do it came out of Strategic Coach, which is an entrepreneurial coaching company. And it's where a lot of people that aren't just brokers, just people that run their own businesses and a bunch of different industries all get together and they all think through frameworks for how to grow their businesses. And I found that over the years are able to compile a lot of great ideas from other business leaders. And it's a pretty open environment where we all feel like we can share our ideas and you're never really in a competitive feel like to the group. It's always along the collaborative lines that if we all share our ideas, we can all work together and build something greater. And so they happen to have a great relationship with the publisher Scribe Media, who I worked with.
Okay.
And I had just gotten to the point where I think 15 years into the business, right, you then have gone through your Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right? If you think of how long it takes you to have enough experience to feel like you have experience you can draw upon, or you have experience that you can share where you start teaching people. And so in our business, you're advising people, and think of all the different things that a warehouse manager or a general manager or a CEO, CFO, or COO have to deal with on a daily basis just to run their business. And what I was finding is being their broker and their advisor, when it was time for them to make a move, it's not like their world stops because it's time to make a move, right? Yeah. So inevitably, you have anyone that we work with is so busy focusing on their people and on their organization and on their growth that when it's time to make a big move, there's a lot of work to do to plan it, to execute it, and to get from the old building to the new building.
Yeah.
I found myself constantly educating, which we still do, and that's just part of our role. But I found there's too big of a body of knowledge to explain everything that a client would need to know. And any client that runs their business is constantly bringing on new talent and new team members. And every new team member may come with or without experience helping move a warehouse. And so there's educating that they need to do amongst their own team or with me and with their new team members. So after helping educate clients often, it's not like a robust FAQ page, right, where there's frequently asked questions, but inevitably we find there's a lot of things that people commonly overlook, parts of the market or the business or the technical aspects of the contract that people don't understand. And it seemed like it would be helpful to have a resource that they can draw upon when they have a question before they need to ask for help, or that they can share with their team to help give their team a primer on, hey guys, we're growing like weeds over here. We're going to have to expand. We're a year out. How's this going to look? How do you even conceive of the project? You're feeling the pain points and you know something needs to happen, but there's no path, like there's no clean document or there's no place you go to that says, how do I do this? And so oftentimes these people, they'll ask us and we'll help them, but seldom does anyone ever have like an A to Z where you can have clarity on, okay, here's the 100 steps along the way. I got these 80 covered, but these 20 I didn't even know about. I didn't think about, or I thought they happened here. They actually happened there. And so I found it was a need that was out there, and it could save a lot of time, a lot of risk, and a lot of headache if there was a resource clients could draw from and have to supplement, some of the work that we do with them. So I had committed to writing it in November 19. I had started the project with my publisher February 2020. Okay. And then I found myself at home with some time to focus on this. So it's not like we all had extra time because of the lockdown or pandemic or the work from home experience. But that just coincided with when I needed to write. And so I found an hour a day in between work, and I have a young family. So it's me, my wife, and our 2 kids that are 6 and 8. So when is there time in the family and in the house when you thought of the Zoom classroom and you've got the dog barking in the background? I also had an hour of writing a day. And it took maybe 4 or 5 months to go from the start of writing and the initial positioning and framing out with Scribe to having a very rough manuscript through which I could then start sharing it with people. And finding, getting other people's input and feedback and figuring out what was resonating and what was most helpful with people. And what a journey to think during those times. It was such a vivid experience, right? Because that whole experience for everyone was very vivid. And the editing process was the second half of 2020. And editing a book. I did not know much about editing, and Scribe held my hand throughout the process, where half of it is editing that you as the author provide for yourself in a bunch of different manners, and half is their professional team. And so that was the second half of last year. And so here we are and wrapping up the first quarter of 2021 with editing all done. And just because the manuscript is done doesn't mean your book is done, right? You can think of, there are a lot of components of design that go into not only a cover, but the interior, and think of where everything is on each page on your Amazon offering, the other, think like Barnes and Noble or other distribution sites. And so it's been a fun journey where I didn't know I needed to know how to write, edit, design, and publish a book, but I knew there was a need. And I knew it was possible that I had enough experience that that experience could lend itself to help people with that need. And I'm excited now that, you've gone through moving warehouses enough to know how many things can go wrong. And we're not in the, fear-mongering business of, there's a lot that can go wrong. It's all about, what does a smooth process look like? And how much more confidence would you have growing your business if you had clarity and insight and some predictability to what it looks like to get to the next building? And then once you have that ironed out and you can do that with your eyes closed, then you could imagine the confidence that would breed in your ability to know, okay, I can scale. I can grow this. If I had enough capital, I could grow a second, third, or fourth. So I found it's exciting to get that into the hands of people that can help them scale more. And it's fun to play a part in some of those projects. And then inevitably people who are not my clients will be able to benefit from this, and we'll be able to help them scale too. So it's exciting to have an impact, even when it's direct or even indirect. So it'll be fun to share.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. And like you said, it helps people get somewhat of a baseline of what to expect, and, get to familiarize themselves with what really will be involved in getting a new space, or potentially a second space, depending on how they're growing or expanding. So it is really an endeavor, and it's great that you took it on, and I think there was a need in the market. So kudos to you for sure for putting it together. And I'm curious if you could say what the one biggest takeaway from the book would be for readers. What would it be?
I think really just having a framework that you can adapt to your business, that can help you for your next project, to envision it and to execute it. It's all about having frameworks that you can use, like a change for different markets, different sizes, different situations. So I tried to make, I created it in a manner so that it could be that. When you think of if you're in New Jersey or if you're in Southern California, right? Those are different markets. There's totally different environments. Or if you're in Kansas City, right? Or if you're in 10,000 feet, 100,000 feet, or 1,000,000 feet, right? Yeah. How can you possibly have the same experience? So what I did is I found all of the commonalities that we all share in those different areas and different sizes and for different building owners. So I feel like what you can take away is just having a framework that you know not only will work for you, it'll work for your team. And if you may decide you don't need to move, but you still need to renew, you still have a contract. Yeah. Or you may find you now have enough saved up where you can own and you can buy your next building. So having a framework to think through those different scenarios is, I feel like that part can have it be evergreen for people as they inevitably go smaller, go larger, or want to own, or decide they don't want to own anymore and they start to lease. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I think the framework is a great takeaway, because if you have the framework, then in a sense you have somewhat of a guide to follow, and you don't feel like you're going so blindly at something, and it definitely can keep you from having potential missteps and having things fall through the cracks as well. So really interesting to talk to you, Justin, and I'm happy that we connected, and also happy to learn about the book. I want to give you a second actually before we wrap up here, because you have a podcast too. So what's the name of your podcast?
Yeah, it's called Industrial Insights. And we're talking primarily about, I mean, A is part of the topics that are in the book that we just covered, right? Because we are in the same world and we play different roles, but all in the same industry. And so what I try and do is balance those two perspectives. So if what we talked about today was all about tenants and companies and business owners, and what they can do to transition into their next building, how they go about finding them. You're successful, Kevin. You will continue to be, and along your way, you will likely start thinking about your career, about retirement, about investing your own money. And so I've tried to balance out the perspective. So not only do we speak with people that are on the tenant side and on the supply chain side and vendors and material handlers, I've started to also interview investors. And investors aren't just like the Prologuses of the world. Investors are people like you and I that invest $20,000 in in a syndication, or think of now you can invest in deals online, to you buying your own building, to you investing in think like REITs and public companies, to you and some high net worth people that will just buy individual buildings on a portfolio basis. So it's exciting to tackle both sides, because you can't have one without the other. And there is a friction and a tension between the two sides. And as a broker, I'm used to being stuck in the middle and stuck, right? That's just my space within this business. And so it's great to be in the middle, because you see what each side needs to do to bring it together, to find ways where it's a win-win, or where it's a winning situation for both sides. So in the podcast, we just explore what makes it work for both sides, and how does that bring deals together and bring people together. And I figure that's good for people to learn how to run their business. It's good for people to learn how to invest. And then it's been about a year, a great experience thus far. And yeah, happy to share it with people and have other people on as guests.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. Industrial Insights, right? Is the name?
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, we'll definitely put that on the newwarehouse.com as well, so people can find it through there. How can people get the book?
It's live on Amazon, anywhere you find books. Okay. And you just search Industrial Intelligence and Justin Smith, and then it'll pop up. And I think after next week, you won't even need to type my name anymore. It'll just be in their search algorithm. But anywhere books are sold, and the ebook and paperback are both available. And then I went through the Audible recording process over this past month.
Oh, nice.
Which is super fun to be a part of. I hear that had heard it would be very difficult and mind-numbing to say lines over and over again, or to re-record different words or paragraphs. But it's a world you and I don't usually get into. And it actually was pretty exciting and interesting to go through the recording process. So you'll find sometime in late May, then the Audible will be available on the same Amazon page where the Kindle and the ebook and the paperback are available.
All right, great. Yeah. And we'll definitely put links to all that on the newwarehouse.com as well. So how can people find out more about Lee and Associates, or get in touch with you guys if they're interested in working with you? Yeah.
We brokers are easy to find. We pick up our phones, we answer email, and our contact information is everywhere. So lee-associates.com is our website. And then for me, email, LinkedIn, all of that is fine. Email is jbsmith@lee-associates.com. And LinkedIn, just Lee and Associates, Justin Smith. And I'm happy to connect with you and with your listeners.
All right, great. We'll put all that information on newwarehouse.com as well. So, Justin, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.